And I don't think that the environmental FUD shuts it down any more than I think the other FUD, right? Crypto crime,
terrorism, it's all
terrorism.
Everybody uses Bitcoin's a terrorist,
Welcome to Dream Richer. Today, Michael Saylor explains how Bitcoin is untouchable by the environmental fanatics, who want Bitcoin changed to proof of stake. He even goes as far as to prove how Bitcoin is in fact good for the environment. Currently, Bitcoin runs on the proof of work protocol. This means that a computer is required to solve a computational problem of a predetermined level of difficulty before it's allowed to take some desired action. Once the computer solves the problem, it shares its answer as proof of its efforts. In simple terms, this is what you would also call Bitcoin mining. Even though proof of work is good news for miners because they can use energy to mine and attain Bitcoin. However, environmentalists hate the idea altogether. In fact, the New York Times magazine went as far as to call Bitcoin mining every bit destructive. So, what do the environmentalists propose? Switch the Bitcoin protocol altogether so mining cannot be carried out. But as Michael Saylor argues, a civil war has been fought between the Bitcoiners and the environmentalists to stop the protocol from ever changing. If you like the video, then don't forget to subscribe. Let's get right into it.
Well, first of all, I think that proof of work mining with Nakamoto consensus, which is what Bitcoin mining is, it's the only proven method for creating a digital asset that is a property rather than a security. And this is a pretty critical idea. So the real elegance of proof of work is that in 10 years, someone that owns no Bitcoin can read the paper. They can go and drop a piece of hardware on a volcano somewhere you don't know of, plug in the internet and start to create Bitcoin, and no one can stop them, right? It's literally permissionless and it's open. But the problem with flipping it is that there is no proof of stake network that has been acknowledged as a property yet. So the regulatory hurdle that's going to have to be covered by other consensus mechanisms, they have to get consensus that they're property. And in fact, you're working against a hurdle, which is, I think on multiple occasions, regulators have said that if you stake something and get a yield on it, it's an investment contract. And if it's an investment contract, it becomes security. If security is not a commodity, if it's not a commodity, it's not property. But the reason that Bitcoin is not going to switch to proof of stake is because, for one, of course, the entire community fought a civil war to keep the policy from changing, the protocol from changing, and that's why it is what it is. But number two, it's highly likely that if you did it wrong, you would end up becoming a security. And if you become a security, its usefulness for a nation state or a public figure would dramatically deteriorate. Plus, you've got this permission issue, which is who has permission to stake their tokens. And then the software developers have to write some code to decide who gets to stake. And the problem with software code that controls who can do this is that someone writes the software. Yeah. And then the issue is who writes the software. So it would drive the thing into chaos. So I don't think politically it will ever happen.
For Bitcoin, I don't think it's logical to say, oh, we should move Bitcoin from proof of work to proof of stake. But it's almost like Bitcoin is on like this timer, like this countdown with the climate frenzy out there, that the cries would get so loud that there's almost nothing that can be done about it.
Bitcoin hasn't seen much particular favor from the governments and the environmental FUD, as Saylor calls it. Besides the hate that Bitcoin gets for using unrenewable energy for mining, it has also been critiqued as a gold mine for terrorists, according to a recent study. There are 4 main reasons why Bitcoin could grow to become the main currency for terrorists, and hence why it needs to be deemed illegal as soon as possible. All of these 4 major reasons revolve around that fact that Bitcoin could be traded on decentralized exchanges that don't require a KYC check and hence cannot be traced. This can promote Bitcoin usage in the dark and deep web, where it will become increasingly hard to ever regulate it.
I understand from a logical standpoint, everything you're saying is true. It's like Bitcoin is on when I say that timer, it's got to move much quicker to the renewable energy sources to be able to kind of create a new way of using energy before those cries get so loud. It just seems like this is the number one issue of our time right now is climate change around the world. A lot of countries are universally agreeing. So I think it's all overblown. I think it's money driven. A lot of it is from the big solar and the big the green energy. So I don't think from a logical standpoint it makes sense to change it, but I also, the cries at some point might get too loud.
99.95% of the carbon emissions in the world come from something other than Bitcoin energy usage. So ultimately, the hardcore environmentalists are going to target cars and airplanes and buildings. And, if you've seen those islands in China where they built like 50 skyscrapers that were empty and then they demolished them all, that's an example of a real climate problem, overbuilding and destroying. I think ultimately, if there are some people going to say, if you use an imaginary car to drive to an imaginary plane, to fly to your imaginary building, and I give you imaginary food and imaginary, imaginary entertainment, it's cheaper. And that's the metaverse model, right? Yeah. And look, the truth is, I can Zoom to you and we're having a Zoom meeting and that's a lot more efficient than flying. But I don't think we're going to eliminate buildings and healthcare and cars and planes in the real world. I think ultimately that there's stuff for the universe and there's stuff for the metaverse. You could build a great business in the metaverse. I mean, Fortnite's a great business. Facebook's got their metaverse business. There's a lot of money to be made in the metaverse. But ultimately, the universe is a distinctly different thing. So I don't really think the people that are interested in carbon emissions are going to find a solution because, of course, eliminating Bitcoin keeps 99.95% of the carbon emissions. They don't really solve their problem. It's a rounding error. And the people that are concerned about energy usage don't really solve their problem either because 99.9% of energy usage is not Bitcoin. And Bitcoin energy usage is falling 18% a year or more because of the protocol. But digital property is here to stay. And I don't think that the environmental FUD shuts it down any more than I think the other FUD, right? Crypto, crime,
terrorism, it's all, terrorism. Everybody uses Bitcoin's a terrorist,
you're seeing that, right? The entire Canada thing right now. There is going to be FUD. But ultimately, when people think about it long enough and they hash it out, they'll conclude that Gary Gensler's even said this, right? He said, Satoshi's innovation is real.
It's clear from Michael Saylor's explanation that Bitcoin is not the problem. Instead, there are much worse things for the environment that environmentalists should focus their energy on. As the environmentalists argue, Bitcoin is inherently bad because of its mining gig. Research shows that one Bitcoin transaction takes 1,544 kilowatts to complete. This is the equivalent of approximately 53 days of power for the average U.S. household. It's clear that Bitcoin mining does take a heavy toll on energy. But as Saylor argues, this is nothing compared to the energy used by airplanes, skyscrapers, and industrial sectors. As Canon O'Leary has oftentimes stated, Bitcoin mining is not inherently wrong. Instead, where and how you get the energy for mining is what matter. Bitcoin miners should use renewable energy such as hydropower, hence making the world more green and sustainable. Do you agree with what he said? Let us know in comments below. See you in the next video.